Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Franki 411 podcast. I'm your host, Haley Overseth. My guest today is Sarah Hussain from Segue of Mind. Sarah specializes in transcendental meditation and spiritual readings to assist people in connecting more deeply with their true self. I had a really great conversation with Sarah. I'm so grateful for her joining us for this interview. I do hope that you will enjoy. I really did enjoy this conversation with Sarah. So today we have with us Sarah Hussain, and she is from Segue of Mind, and she also produces her own podcast, SOM Talks podcast. Sarah, hello. Thank you very much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me, Haley.
So I do want to see if you could just sort of introduce yourself a little bit to the audience. Tell us what it is that you do with Segue of Mind, your website and your podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can introduce myself. So what I do with SOM is that SOM is a spiritual consultancy as well as transcendental meditation focused company. So the spiritual consultancy is done primarily by me, and the transcendental meditation teaching is also done by me. And now I have a few members on board who I'm teaching the TM practices so that they can do it independently themselves as well. So the focus of SOM is essentially empowering ourselves through the process of TM, which is a transcendental meditation that helps us access deeper levels of our consciousness and get us connected to our own spiritual light, like our own divine path.
Sure.
And another component of transcendental meditation, which sometimes goes quite unnoticed, is that it helps in subconscious mind programming. And subconscious mind programming is essentially the code in our brain.
Right. Like your brain's a computer and you got to program and code it the way that you want it to operate.
Mm-hmm. It's that code on which we operate. And if we have a different code, the operation is different. And our reality is a reflection of our programming. It is a reflection of how we view things, how we perceive things. A lot of the times when I'm doing a spiritual consultancy and people come in, it is a lot about detaching themselves of beliefs and traumas and memories that are in their consciousness, awake and active, which are keeping them from acquiring the right beliefs and the right programming in order to change their life. Mm-hmm. So it's like a 3-step process. So they come in, the first thing we do is release those attachments, release the trauma, release the programming that has not been serving them and that has been giving them their reality so far. Then the second step is to introduce the new programming. Mm-hmm. So an understanding of self, a new programming. And this part of the process is facilitated by the spiritual guidance that people experience when they're in that deeper level of their consciousness. A lot of the times that spiritual guidance comes in as visions, as clarity, as intuition. So it's not me telling people that, hey, you got to be brave in order to follow your dreams. It is them understanding that this is something that they have to embody because of the messages that are coming through. And it's a very natural process of embodying your true self. So as soon as you start letting go of the things which are holding you back, you start to step into your true self, which is a very easy and a natural process, just needs a little bit of guidance. And that is why I'm there, to help them through the journey. And the third part is that when they have reached the state of their true self, then they are able to see their path clearly. So whatever is needed to follow that path, whatever is needed to really empower themselves through that resourcefulness of the spiritual connection that they have in the true self. Mm-hmm. So the true self, as I mentioned, it gets messages and intuitive hits, and it gets a lot of knowledge through those transcendental meditation segments, like when they have actually accessed their deeper consciousness. There's a lot of information coming in. So the third part of establishing that connection, understanding what is coming in, and being able to follow the path.
I really love that. And I think that the word that you hit on that really is, for me, the big thing is the empowerment angle, that this is to empower people to help themselves to be following their highest path. And the thing that I know that sometimes, we can get a little caught up in the idea of like, a mission or what you're meant to do. And that somehow that's something that might be against what you might like, but It's not. Whatever is your mission or your purpose or the thing that is the best for you to do is also going to be the thing that you enjoy the most. And we do have a lot of programming that tells us to deny that of ourselves because we have, other obligations, other responsibilities to society and what have you. So I really do love that. I really do think that the whole process is great. And you did give me a reading, which was really great. I did really enjoy that. And I do think it's so helpful to have the replacement ideas that you provide, the idea of it's one thing to know the thing you need to release, but you also need to have tools of what do you replace that old programming with so that you're programming in a new, more helpful ideas and self-talk. That is a really huge part of it. Absolutely. I love that. So can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and how did you, what was your path into doing this? How did you come? Because it seems like you have a really very intricate understanding of a lot of these things in terms of, a connection to the higher self or your true self, a lot of knowledge about the processes that help people to get there. So how did you start and get into this yourself personally?
Yeah, I would love to dive in. There's something that is popping up in my mind, and that is when you were talking about your experience, and you said that there's some knowledge of how to replace the old programming. Perhaps people may be wondering that what does that mean? Like
Yeah,
when
sure.
somebody's, so I just want to give a little bit of detail on that. So when we are releasing attachments that are not serving us, so it could be a trauma from childhood, it could be an incident that you went through when you were 21 years old, it could really be anything which has had an impact on you. And it is quite underlying. It's not something that you're always consciously thinking about, but when you do think about, it's going to bring up some emotions.
Right. Something very deeply ingrained that
exactly
you get triggered and you don't even know it until you have been triggered sometimes of, this is, and you don't necessarily know where it's coming from.
Yeah. And trigger is a key word because, when something is affecting us, that means that it has the power to trigger us. And when we're releasing those things, what starts to happen that the trigger component disappears. Now you're no longer triggered. And another thing is that when people have these memories and traumas awake in their consciousness, they're so conditioned to live with it that they don't even know what it feels like to live without it. That is their normal.
That is a very big thing. And how do you create a new normal if you can't kind of figure out what that new thing that you would prefer necessarily feels like? So, I think that is a big challenge for people. How do I find that emotion that I would prefer when I am so conditioned to feel this emotion that I do not prefer?
Yeah, 100%. So the readings are quite of an awakening process. Because you pretty much, what I experience is that everything comes to the surface. So it's like A, B, C, and D. These things have been bogging you down. And when the person realizes that, they go like, oh yeah, this is true. I've been upset about it, or this has been hurting me. Or yeah, I do feel that because of this incident, I haven't had the confidence to move forward. I've been having low self-esteem. So things surface and are very direct in that reading. And there's really no shying away. Because here we're doing some important concrete work, and the consciousness doesn't lie. The consciousness is very open, and the consciousness is accurate. So it tells you exactly what's there that's holding you back. So when I'm reading people's consciousness, oftentimes, it's usually I get just like confirmation just by seeing their reactions because they're so emotional about the things that I mentioned.
Right.
And so the replacing part, the new programming, that comes for each and everybody is specifically dependent on their soul path. So when I was reading you, I think I mentioned butterfly like 5 times.
Yeah. And it's funny because I do see butterflies all the time. And like I was walking my dog and I had to stop walking my dog for a second to like hold her away from other people who were passing on the path. And this butterfly like literally landed in front of where we were and just sat there the whole time. We sat there like it was just chilling with us. And so,
Wow.
and I love things like that, that you're able to sort of pick up on things that might be useful synchronistic signs for people to be able that are all, again, like you say, that are already a part of your consciousness, that are already a part of your higher self or your true self, trying to speak to
Yeah.
you and give you signs and give you information. But yeah, so how did you come to know that you had this ability or this capacity to read people in this way? I mean, obviously it's, I think it's something that we all have. We're sort of born with this ability, this intuitiveness and understanding of our interconnectivity, but we are conditioned out of it as we get older. So can you talk a little bit about your personal story and how did you come to sort of find that you had this capacity?
So my gift was something I didn't know I had it because I was really small. I'm going back to the age of 6.
Oh,
So when I was
so
6
from
years
very
old,
young.
from very young. So when I was 6 years old, I used to feel a lot of pressure every single morning in my third eye.
Okay.
Every single morning. So a memory from childhood is this. I would be going to school and everybody's looking outside, but because I would feel this ticklish feeling all the time and like this pressure on my third eye, I didn't want to look at anything which would make me feel ticklish. So whenever I would see a fence or whenever I would see something with a pokey,
Yeah,
angle,
sure.
fences outside the house are pokey. So whenever I would look at them, I would feel so ticklish that I would literally close my eyes and go sit in the school bus, close my eyes and go to school. This was every single day.
Wow, that is really interesting. I mean, but
And then
also that it was a sensation that was consistent and different enough that even as a young child, you were like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah. I used to tell my mom, like, I feel so ticklish here every morning. I feel so ticklish here. And she was like, okay, that's okay.
Just kind of brushed it off, like, don't know what to do with that.
She just, like, I didn't take it seriously. She didn't take it seriously either. And she was like, that's
Mhm.
okay. Like, she thought I'm just a kid who's, feeling ticklish. Sure.
Yeah, didn't really
So,
think much of it or take it very seriously.
yeah, we didn't think much of it. But I understood at the time, when I would be sitting, now I understand that when I would be sitting in the school bus as a 6-year-old, you're kind of sleepy going to school.
Yeah,
And that is a very good state for your third eye chakra to be active because I can start seeing visions and everything early in the morning.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so
When you're a bit more sort of relaxed and not quite
yeah,
in
in
that.
alpha state of the mind. In the alpha
Yes.
state of the mind, passive attention, you're relaxed, you can daydream, looking outside, hearing what's happening. The school bus is stopping now. Okay, somebody's entering. Okay, cool. Looking at them, saying hi, things like that.
Hmm.
But at the time, this ticklish feeling would literally just lead me closing my eyes and going to school. And this happened till the age of 12. And I used to feel very, very ticklish. But after, I grew up a little bit. So from 6 to, let's say, I was 8 years old, I started to kind of control this. So I would still feel ticklish, like I'd still feel so much pressure in my third eye, but I would be able to like take my attention away from it and it wouldn't be able to bother me.
So kind of
Things,
almost learning to sort of turn it off and, to some extent, right?
mm,
Like, or just,
no,
or
I wouldn't
you
say
didn't
turn
really
it
see it
off.
that way. Just that you would not allow it to sort of not a bothersome attention situation.
I wouldn't, yeah, it was still there, but as I was growing up, I would say I learned how to tackle it. So it wouldn't
Okay.
turn off, but it would still be there like till the age of 12. But I was able to tackle it and it wouldn't like, when I was 6 years old, I literally closed my eyes. But when I was a little older, like 10, 11, I still would feel the pressure, but I would still go play, do things, talk to my friends, I still like, look out and not let it get to me too much. So I was able
Okay.
to kind of tackle it and know how to like deal with it. Um, then comes the main part, which is my intuition and visions. So my intuition and visions, they started to open up, around the age of 12 and 13. I would have very strong intuition. So, telling my mom, like, I think grandmom is going to visit us today. This is a normal thing, by the way. A lot of people, when they tune into their intuition, they would start feeling the energies of people before they even come see them. So
That's
these,
very interesting.
yeah.
Did your mom ever kind of think that it was strange? Did it register to her as being unusual? Or was it still sort of just, you're a kid and you just say these things? Was it something that she recognized at all, or this was kind of something that you were just developing on your own or understanding on your own?
She started to have a feeling and an idea because of the regular occurrence of these things. She started to feel like, okay, there is something special here, but she didn't know what it's going to develop into. So
Okay.
it wasn't like she would sit me down or talk to me about it, but whenever I would talk to her about it, she'd go like, okay, that's good. Like I was very small, like this has started since the age of 6. So I was a small, and I used to like wonder why I would get visions sometimes. I started to get visions around the age of 12, 13. It would almost be like a snapshot of what's going to happen in like 2 days.
So kind of almost like a replay of a TV scene in your mind or something like that, just sort of seeing something happen
Yeah.
and then it would happen a little bit later.
Yeah, exactly. So I would see like a vision, for example, grandpa's coming or grandmom is coming, and let's say they're bringing me something or they're upset. So I would get that vision that they're upset. So I'd tell my mom, I think they're going to be upset when they come. So my
Oh,
mom was like, okay.
oh, great. I have to prepare for that. Okay.
So my mom was like, okay, I'll talk to them if they're upset. That's fine. Why do you say that? And I was like, because I saw it. I think it's in my mind. So I would say, I think when I was a small. So I would go like, I think they're going to be upset. I didn't use the words intuition or vision because I didn't even have that understanding. I would only go like, oh, this is my guess that they're going to be upset. I literally started to take it as a game. And
that's kind of, it's a little bit, I don't know, innocent or nice that you could be playful about it in some ways, and that your mom was not discouraging of it, that she would let you say those things and let you express that of yourself. So that's really great that you at least had that environment where you could express that and sort of play with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great that it was very important for me to like at that age, how does a mind of a kid works, right? It's mostly like it's a game. I'm guessing this. Oh, it worked out.
Right.
See, I told you this is what's gonna happen. So that happened a lot. Me telling my friends, see, I told you, Miss Jerry is not going to take a test today. I told you. It's most of that. And so we would all bet like what's going to happen. Is she going to, are we going to have a test?
Are you going to be right? What's going to happen?
Yeah. So no, we would bet like, yeah, exactly. And, sometimes when the teacher is like, you're going to have a pop quiz, we would bet and I'll go like, I think we won't have it. Like, I think she's just saying it to scare us.
Yeah. Like, so I know a little better. She's being tricky. Like,
and so everybody would bet like, okay, let's see if we have like, so some of my friends would go like, I think we're going to have like a pop quiz Monday. I go like, I don't think so. And so it was like a game for me as a child. Mm-hmm. I would like play. So as I grew older, I went through a series of challenges especially between the ages of 19 and the ages of 25. I'm 30 now. Yeah, I'm 30 years old now. So when I went through those series of challenges, at the age of 25, I honestly felt like it cannot get worse.
Yeah, really,
this is
kind
rock
of
bottom.
Right. So very sort of dark night of the soul kind of situation for a number of years.
Yeah. And the last hit that I got was around the age of 25. And I remember thinking to myself that there's no way I can survive this unless I have something supernatural helping me. Because it was just really, really dark. And I felt extremely lonely and betrayed and helpless and just unarmed for the situations. I wasn't ready. So that was a monumental time for me because that is when I completely let go of everything and just started to get in touch with my true self. And I started to, how it started was by feeling gratitude. So in a very brave way, I would say, like, when I was in the lowest of the lowest moments, I listened to a book called The Secret by Rhonda Byrne.
Yes, I am familiar with that. Yep.
She's amazing.
That book and then the film that they did. That's kind of one of the things that got me really going on my journey too. And I certainly do understand. I've been in those places too, where you get sort of so in a low place that you finally like, I give up. I don't know how to do this. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I know that, my ego brain does not understand the right ways to be operating. And you do
Mhm.
sort of, you get to a point where you say to, you recognize that you have an inner self, an inner being, a higher power, however you want to describe it, that,
Mhm.
there is something else that has
Mhm.
better for me than what I can figure out on my own.
Yeah, yeah. So exactly. So when I was listening to her book, she mentioned something that how our thoughts create our reality and our expectations from our life are usually get materialized if they're persistent thoughts. And so I was like, okay, so much has happened. The only thing I can do is be grateful. I'm still grateful for being alive. I'm still grateful
Mm-hmm.
for, being loved. I used to feel a lot of loving energy around me, like a lot. Um, to the point that I would be sitting in my room and I didn't want to go see my family or I didn't want to meet my friends because I honestly felt so taken care of in privacy. So I used to
That's
feel
interesting.
loving energy. Yeah, yeah, a lot of loving energy. And I would feel it and I would say, thank you for being here. I love you. Thank you. And,
Yeah.
things like that.
Whoever's helping me, I appreciate you.
Yeah, yeah. There was this one time I was crying and it was like late at night, I guess 2 a.m. And I was crying really, really hard. And I'd been crying for a good hour. And then my eyes started to be red and burning. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you cry so much, like your eyes
Yeah.
burn. That's like a limit, I guess. Like that's when your eyes are like, okay, we can't take this,
Yeah, we can't keep doing this.
yeah, so it was burning and I didn't have I didn't know what to do with my eyes burning. And I go to the washroom and I see that they're red and they're burning. Just excessive crying out caused them to do that. So I go back to my bed and then I pray and then I say, "Can you please fix my eyes? Like it's hurting me a lot."
Mm-hmm.
And then my eyes were perfectly fine like 30 seconds later.
Amazing.
They were perfectly fine. Like the burning sensation was so severe that I got up and I went to the washroom to see like what happened. Like did I like
Right.
scratch myself?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just red and swollen. Like I could tell like how when somebody had a good cry and they're kind of swollen in their eye. So it was like that. And so I go back and I'm like I was like I can't do anything right now. It's like 2 a.m. Like so
Right.
can
There's
you
nothing I
please
can do to fix this. I'm at that point where I have nothing left. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, and I had like, no medicine, nothing. I didn't have like my sisters weren't awake. So I was like, "Can you please fix this?" So I was talking when I was talking to the people, to the beings around me or to the higher power. It's like I prayed. I was like, "Can you please fix this? My eyes are hurting a lot."
Mm-hmm.
And just shortly after, it completely disappeared and I fell asleep.
That's
I didn't
amazing.
have any pain. I fell asleep like in that state. I felt so relaxed and the burning sensation left and I just fell asleep. And then I woke up after like a good, I slept I think around like 2:34 and I woke up around like 10. So I slept all
So I
the
had
way
a
like
good solid sleep.
7.5 hours. Yeah, yeah. And then when I woke up, I realized like what happened last night. I thought it was I was like, yay, it was so magical and supportive.
Yeah,
I
somebody's
already
out there helping me and it's, okay, maybe I'm not alone in all of this.
Yeah, I was like, I already know that I'm surrounded by beings who are loving, but this is like really nice because they are prompt in helping me. And that is when I started to get into TM a lot. So
Okay.
I would start to do TM. Again, remember my third eye was very active as a child.
Yeah.
So when I started to do TM, so before doing TM, I would do focused meditation on my third eye to open it up. And I started to do that and I started to see things then. I would see beings, I would see people's consciousness, what happened with their dad, what happened with their mom. It was
Is this something? So when you say that you see these things,
mhm.
how is that experience for you? Is this a like mind's eye sort of thing? Do you see things in your eyesight vision, or is this more of a sort of like internal in your mind visualization that's happening?
Mm, Yeah. So I think the best way to explain this is that would be that we have the human eye. So there's a human eye, and there,
Right.
I can see you right now as a human eye. But then there is also a spiritual eye, and that is connected to the third eye. So when I focus spiritually, I start to see a lot of things. So,
Okay.
for example, when I was reading you, um, you know, I was so first I was talking to you normally like Sarah, and then I started to focus spiritually, and I started to get information about like, people and events and stuff, and then we started to have a conversation about that for a good hour.
Yeah.
So that transition is essentially just focus. So I'm focusing first with my human eye, and everything is quite 3D. And as soon as I shift my focus spiritually or clairvoyantly, I start to see a lot of things. And I would see the person, I would see how they're happy, what makes them happy. I think we talked a lot about how it's, you're like a happy soul and you're
Oh,
chirpy.
yeah.
So that was a vision that's coming to me through the spiritual eye, that I'm seeing you're very happy, very chirpy, like a butterfly,
Yeah.
synonymous to the personality.
Right.
Um,
And it's kind of interesting because when you were doing that with me, it was kind of something that made me realize, like, I do like talking to people. I do like having conversations about things I'm interested in. But I had
mhm,
sort of like gotten so far into the programming of the things that you should do and not necessarily the things I wanted to do, that I had started to see myself very much as an introvert, and talking to
mhm,
you, I was like, no, but I do like talking to people. I do like, learning new things, and I do like having these very interesting conversations. So, I mean, that's something interesting too. Again, the idea of how you do have your true self, you have your highest self, and then you have a lot of layers of this like conditioned, learned, like the ego self, the human self, who
mhm,
you've been taught you're supposed to be. And
mhm,
you got to kind of peel those back and find
mhm.
that real you again.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. All of that is so accurate. Your true self, your soul is essentially, it has a print. So there is a personality to it. What
Mhm.
makes you lovely? What makes you lively? What makes you happy?
It
And
makes you lovely too, is, when
what
you're
makes you
lively, you're
lovely
lovely.
too?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, experiences really start to put us in a little bit of a place where we don't want to express that because we don't feel safe to
Yes.
do that. We feel like,
Hmm.
oh, if we'll do it, somebody's gonna, say something. I maybe my me being in my true self, can like trigger some people. They may behave in such a way to me that I don't like it. So it's better for
Yeah,
me to not be in my true self.
that is true.
And,
That is something that can be very, not
and
everyone is necessarily ready to see you be your true self because they've got their own layers they haven't peeled back. And that can make them they can trigger other people to lash out in certain ways that make you,
yeah.
very true, make you feel unsafe.
100%. And the primary reason is that everybody who wants to be in their state of true self, everybody wants to be in their state of true self, by the
Right.
way. There is
Yeah.
no exception. The true self is your happy place, it's the safe place, it's the place where you are truest to your own being. And when we have difficult experiences in life, we shut that down
Yep.
because we
It's,
believe that we are not deserving of it, we're not worthy of it.
mhm.
And how can I live like that is a question. Why would I get all of the things that I desire is another
Right.
question. Because
When
our
really we should be
self-esteem.
asking, why not? Why wouldn't I? Of course,
Mhm,
that's actually something I've kind of been telling myself lately. Like, well, of course, the things that I like, my inner being must like. It's
mhm,
not like we're in disagreement about
mhm,
what makes me happy or what I would prefer to experience. But
mhm,
again, it's that ego self that's been programmed, away from that, and you
mhm,
sort of you learn not to trust yourself, essentially.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. And the while we are on this topic, the ego self has desires, but those desires are to seek validation from other people, to seek approval, to be liked, to be identified and approved. So
Yeah.
whoever we're surrounded with by the people, by our family, by partner, by society, the egoistic desires are to get their approval and to have a sense of identity in front of the world. But your
Hmm.
soul's desires, they don't have that requirement. You don't need any validation for your soul
Right.
desires.
Because
There's a
you're
sense of
already
knowing.
valid. There, you know that you are valid, and there's no need to seek that outside of yourself. You just know, well, of course I'm worthy. Of course I'm valid. Of course I'm allowed to be me. And there is no need for an external validation or external approval from anything else because you have it within yourself.
Yeah, and another part of that is that the egoistic desires, always have a void with them. So even if you follow your egoistic desires, you will experience a void. And the void is anxiousness, confusion, not knowing what to do, not understanding things clearly. And there's just a lot of confusion, not knowing, anxiety in that void. And also, it doesn't seem like there's an answer. So it's like, who do you talk to feel better about it? Perhaps you
Mm-hmm.
can have a good conversation with friends, but that is just temporary sensory stimulation where you feel happy, have a few drinks, that's almost
Right.
like distracting yourself from the void, because the void is there for a reason. The void is a blessing. The void in the void associated with the desires of the ego is there to make you realize that you're away from your true self. And it is
That's a
all,
really great perspective to have because I think that, in a lot of some of the spiritual things that you see, there's a lot of talk about, having to sort of bypass the ego or quiet the ego or what have you. And and that's something I'm kind of coming to realize in my journey, the idea that, no, you have to integrate your ego. Your ego is still a part of you, and so that's a really interesting perspective and a really, I think, a helpful perspective to say, no, your ego is a blessing and that void is a blessing. It's a thing that helps you. It's an indicator to some degree, so that you can
yeah.
look at yourself and say, what am I operating out of? What am I operating from? Am I operating from my true self that is always comfortable with where I am? Or am I operating
Mm,
out of the ego self that is, concerned about material things?
so yeah, what you said is absolutely accurate. The ego self is serving a purpose, and it is important to realize that ultimately the goal is to be in the state of your true self, because that is the place from where you can serve yourself and you can serve the world that you're meant to serve in the highest way possible, in the
Mm-hmm.
best way possible as well. And the void that is over there, it is offering you the contrast. So it offers you the contrast. It lets you know that the void is there for a reason. It is time to perhaps look within, take a few steps back, and start to get engaged with your true self. Now, the desires of the true self don't have any void. They don't come with any void.
Right.
And they come with fulfillment, and they come with a sense of knowing and a sense of abundance associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a bliss component as well. You feel like you're following your bliss when you're when you're in the state of your true self. So this is something that I learned, through my own journey, and I found it to be so incredibly helpful, and it awakened me to my own true potential when I realized that, okay, I experienced a void. Now I'm coming within and I don't experience that void anymore. That means
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting in touch with my true self. I'm allowing my higher self to guide me. So I start to listen to that intuition. I start to listen to that voice in our head, which is showing us the path, and follow it with full trust. And sometimes it's scary because you
Mm-hmm.
have no practical steps in place. You don't know what it is saying, but you can always ask for more clarity, for more help, and it will guide you. And that path is the most abundant and beautiful path you can be on. It will have some ups and downs for you to learn from and for you to metamorphosize and transform into the version of yourself that is connected to the highest good of everybody, including yourself. And yeah, that entire journey is beautiful. It is, one of the most beautiful journeys any human being can experience, to be in touch with their true self and to follow the path of their true self. And as you mentioned, the ego does have the ego is an indicator.
Mm-hmm.
The void is a big indicator. It's the contrast that is serving you for your own good. It essentially reminds you that, hey, it's time to disengage with everybody else and everything else. Just look within and just follow your own path, follow
Right.
your own light.
And so I wonder if you can maybe talk just a little bit about that, the trust element, because I know for me personally, I know that's sort of, the challenge that I'm working with. I'm trying to be mindful about the way that I speak, speak into the world what
Mhm.
you want, speak into the universe what you want to experience, kind of thing. But
Mhm.
in the element of trust and sort of, following, it's like, the one of the I think it's actually in The Secret, the film, one of the metaphors
Mhm.
they use, the idea of driving at night with your headlights on. You
Yeah.
only see so much of the road. You don't
Mhm.
see the fullness of the road, but you have to
Mhm.
trust that the road is there and continues to go. So can you talk a
Mhm.
little bit about that element and, what you do to sort of assist people in finding that trust and embodying that trust?
Yeah, that is such an incredible question, Haley. So thank you for asking.
Well, thank you for being here to answer it, because I know I'm not the only one looking for that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fun. This is so fun. My pleasure. So the trust component. Yeah, so okay, here is something that people may not realize, but it is key in order to follow your guidance, and that is your healing. At times we feel that we have completely healed, and now
Mm-hmm.
the messages are coming and we're following it. But if you're not able to follow the messages, the healing is still happening. It's a still in process. There's still layers that you need to heal.
Okay.
And let me give you a scenario. So let's talk about somebody who has started the healing process and they have realized, the conditioning that they had experienced as a child, perhaps some incidents that were difficult for them to navigate through. They have had attachments to those incidents and what they got from those incidents and to the people in those incidents. Now they started their healing process and they started to hear this intuitive voice that follow this path.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be difficult for this person to follow if they are still having the old programming, which says you may not be able to achieve it. This is way too risky. How are you
Right.
going to make yourself proud?
The
Whoa, people might laugh on you.
the doubt
Right.
element. Yeah.
The doubt element, the doubt and the fear element. So it's still there, very much awake. If they're not able to follow their intuition, that means healing is still due. A
Okay.
transformation is still due. So I would recommend that you engage in transcendental meditation practices, which is essentially the practice where you're accessing your subconscious mind and you reprogram your subconscious mind. You instill beliefs in yourself, which you know are going to help you propel forward. When you have that transformation within, Haley, it is so much easier to trust the voice because
Right.
there's no fear. There's a lot of faith. So the fear is now, it's substituted by faith. And there is a strength and power because you're so connected that
Mm-hmm.
you're like, I'll be taken care of one way or the other.
It's going to get figured out. It's
It's going to
interesting,
be
this whole
figured out.
conversation to me, because, since the reading, I have been doing more meditation and more, a lot of the things that we discussed in the session that
Hmm.
I had with you.
Yeah.
And I can feel that I am in a transitional space because
Hmm.
I notice I'm being more actively aware of
Hmm.
my self-talk, right? The
Hmm.
internal voice and the things that I say to myself, and
Hmm.
sort of ensuring that I am saying the positive things. I'm asking myself more often, that question of, well, would my inner being be scared of this? Well, of course not. My inner being knows that there's no reason to be afraid of anything. Would my inner
Yeah.
being be worried about this? Well, of course not. My inner being has access to absolutely everything,
Hmm.
and all the so much more knowledge than my human self has access to. Of course my inner being knows how to
Hmm.
get from A to B, essentially.
Hmm.
So, it's I I can feel myself getting closer to that connection on a daily basis. I can feel myself getting into a space where I can say to myself, okay, you know what? I don't know what I don't have the full clarity of what the full road looks like, but I
Hmm.
do know it's there.
Hmm.
And it's interesting. I am seeing these little things so far that are kind of falling into place, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the synchronistic ways. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's shifting now. And I think that's the big thing. And I think that's kind of the big thing that you work with
Mm-hmm.
is the energy is shifting from the anxiety and the fear into being a little more excited, being a little more anticipatory, being a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more interested and intrigued in, okay, well, if this and this falls into place and was
Mm-hmm.
able to correct itself, because there's been, specific things for me that I've sort of been like, okay, inner me, you go ahead and correct this. I know you've got more capacity to do that than I do. And things
Mm-hmm.
fall into place. And it's sort of becoming, it's kind of like the idea of like dominoes. It's like, okay, what's the next big domino that's going to come?
Mm-hmm.
What's the next thing?
Yeah.
And so it becomes
Wonderful.
something more exciting of,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the more that I get into this place of connectivity with my true self, the more
Mm-hmm.
these things present themselves to me. And so it's,
Mm-hmm.
it's becoming
Yeah.
it's so can you talk
Yeah.
maybe a little bit about that and how you work with people in that respect, and because it is sort of
Mm-hmm.
like things just kind of become magical
Mm-hmm.
on your own,
Yeah.
on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. That is quite the word, magical.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's really, how do you describe things which logically may seem like, okay, wow, how is this working out?
Right. And your
Yeah.
logic brain wants to have a very sort of scientific, this is why, but
Mm-hmm.
there's, that's not how your true self needs. Your true self does not need that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So this process where, talking about your journey, by the way, you're doing really wonderful. I was just
Thank
reading it while
you.
you're talking. I think you're doing really, really wonderful.
You know what? And you are definitely someone who's been helpful. And I'm so glad you're here on the show to talk. Cause I think so many other people find themselves in that place of, that there's something else calling you that you want to follow, but you're not. And so
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's really wonderful that you have these services and these readings and these things available to help people, because we do need some guidance sometimes. You
Mm-hmm.
don't always necessarily know where to start, so
Mm-hmm.
it's certainly very helpful that, I do it. Like I said, I think the reading that we did and the session I had with you was so helpful. Just even having very simple, okay, this is where you are having some blockages. And
Mm-hmm.
here are things that you can use to replace,
Mm-hmm.
again, that programming. Instead of
Mm-hmm.
thinking these thoughts, think these
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
just that simple having something else to self-talk to yourself
Yeah.
can be so transformative.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, as you were saying, that transition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you transition from the state of fear to having more faith and to be excited and to be in the state of, anticipating and,
Mm-hmm.
looking forward to the changes that's happening? So, essentially, what it starts to happen is that um, when you are in the egoistic state, you still have attachments to things, places, and people that have impacted you.
Mm-hmm.
And the reading of the consciousness is very interesting, because, just going back to your reading without giving any details.
Oh,
um,
you can. I don't care. We can. It's fine. I,
yeah.
I'm
Okay.
here. I'm here to help people. If people can get something out of my journey that is helpful to
Mhm.
them, I'm perfectly happy to share.
Okay, wonderful. So, if you recall, when I was doing your reading, your age started to come up, like between the ages of 24 to 30. Then this happened at 36. Now you're feeling this way, yada, yada,
Yeah.
yada. Your parent was there, like fatherly figure, your
Yeah.
grandmom. So,
Which
well,
I thought was very interesting because both my dad and grandma are passed on from this,
mhm,
human physical experience, and I do
yeah.
talk to them frequently.
Hmm.
And so that for me was just a really nice confirmation, that
Hmm.
like, okay, I can listen to this, I can trust this, which
Hmm.
obviously is something that, again, we are all interconnected, and the universe knows the kind of confirmation that you might need to help you on your
Hmm.
journey.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And, those conversations are beautiful guidance messages that we're getting. So yeah, just going back to that, essentially, so when I was doing your reading, essentially the timeline popped up. It was like, this is how you were between 24 to 30. And then I remember there was a transition happening where you're becoming more mature. And then this is what happened later on, yada, yada, yada. And we covered those points. And we also covered why that was happening, why you were all of a sudden you had to like mature, be responsible, you know, be the grown-up Haley, the mature Haley, the responsible, I got to take care of myself, I got to take care of my responsibilities Haley. So we spoke about this and what incidents cause you to become that. The reason behind bringing those things to surface in a consciousness reading is so that you are able to then have awareness and release. You know, you have awareness and you release. And then there are particular events which have really big impact on us, which hurt us a lot. And, you know, it's hard to always like relive those events because we don't consciously always think about them. But our consciousness thinks about them. If they still hurt us so much, that means that person, we need to forgive them in order to clear them out of our consciousness. So there's that practice too. Remember, I think I gave you the detachment practice of people.
Yes. And again, that's another of the sort of self-talk tools that I have found useful.
Yeah. So yeah, essentially, Haley, just going from that egoistic state where you have a lot of attachments and there are a lot of things which are not working for you. I want to highlight egoistic state is not a bad state. It is just a state. Yeah, it is simply the state that is not in touch with your true self. That is when you're not in touch with your true self. So when you are in the egoistic state, again, that pain, that trauma, that anxiety, that worry, that fear, a lot of fear is there in the egoistic state. That is an indication that a lot has to be released from your consciousness. Your consciousness wants to feel free. So it wants to feel, it wants to feel free and it wants to feel unattached to any of that. It just wants to feel happy and blissful. So what starts to happen is a transition starts to happen. So from that egoistic, fearful state where you feel stuck and you don't know what to do, you start now going towards, okay, I think I'm getting an understanding of what I need to do. And what has happened in the middle is healing. You understanding what was holding you back, and then you're releasing those events. You understanding what happened at the age of, let's say, 20, had been having such a massive impact on you. Okay, surfacing that, releasing it. So healing is the bridge between your ego self and your true self. And you right now are in a transition period, and you know there are layers that you're gonna go through one by one. And sometimes people go like, you know, in my very recent, I was talking to a client and she mentioned that, can you please tell me everything that I need to do in one session, like from 0 to 100? And I said,
you know, you can try to do that, but it's, you know, you can spin out real easy if you try to. And I understand that sentiment. I mean, the impatience and I just want to be there. I just want to feel good. I just want to let go of these things. But that in itself is a thing that you have to work through. You know, the idea of allowing yourself to heal and allowing yourself to be sort of, a work in progress, I guess you could say to some degree.
100%. That's the main thing. You allow yourself to be work in progress, because your consciousness will show the snapshot of what you are experiencing currently. I can give guidelines the way I gave you, that this is what you need to do in order to get to this place. But as you go through that journey, you may experience like, okay, you know, I got those things. Now I have a few things. Your consciousness is going to show that when you get to that phase. So that's why meditation is very helpful, because once you start to meditate, you don't even require these readings at that point, if you are very connected.
Because the things, the sort of realizations kind of come on their own. And that does happen for me a lot. And certainly recently has been happening for me a lot. Just kind of the idea of, oh, I was looking at this the wrong way. So for example, I was sitting outside in my backyard, and I was kind of having some anxiety feelings come up. And I frequently associate anxiety feelings with money concerns. And it popped into my head all of a sudden. What if you're associating that anxiety feeling with the wrong concern? You think it's about money. That's not what it's about. And in my mind, I went, it's not about money. It's about what the people in my life will think about the way that I build my abundance. The way that I want to build my abundance does not look the way that they expect it ought to, or that they understand the idea of building abundance. That is where my anxiety is coming from. It's not about the abundance itself. It's about what other people are thinking of it. And again, having to sit there and say, well, your inner being isn't concerned about what other people are thinking about what you're doing. Your inner being doesn't have that anxiety feeling. So really it does. You're peeling back those layers and finding that thing that I thought I was worrying about. It was, I was looking at it a little bit incorrectly, that I wasn't worried about money necessarily. I was worried about, okay, well, if I really start following my path and building abundance from what brings me joy and not from what everyone expects you to do, what are people going to think? And that was truly where those feelings were coming from. But if I hadn't given myself the space to sit in, like you say, meditation, to let that sort of message or intuitive, understanding come through, I would have continued to just associate it solidly with money and not understanding that it's not even really money that you're concerned about.
Right. So, that is a very good example, because that example can cover a few things. So, for listeners, when you mentioned that you had that epiphany, that is the state when you're receiving that guidance from your true self, right? And that feels like what you're experiencing right now. Clarity. It feels like clarity. And it's a process. With that clarity, you are reprogramming yourself. So a new Haley is being birthed.
Right.
And that process of the new Haley to emerge is going to be, let's say, I think in your case, I remember mentioning to you 3 months or 3 to 6 months. I don't know. Did you write it down? But I think I
know I did.
Months.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So,
I think I mentioned
go
for
ahead.
3 for 30 days to be doing the meditation every single day, 30 to 45 days. And I remember saying that, it's going to take about 3 to 6 months. And the reason is that you can definitely accelerate the process. Sometimes people go oh, I want to, go from point A to point B in a week. But you're also, a living, breathing, spiritual being.
Right. You can't force it. And that is, I think, a big, it's as much as, everyone wants to have that, that easy, give me this guided meditation that just gets me there. And I understand that, because I'm not going to pretend that I haven't been that person, but it does become, if you just allow that intuitive thought process to happen, it your consciousness wants to accelerate it on its own. And you're sitting there and saying, no, I gotta that. I want to step on the gas pedal. No, your ego can't step on the gas pedal. Your ego,
what you were saying, the speeding up process. The true self does not have a concept of speeding up. The time is a concept of ego self.
Right.
The true self has a concept of becoming, embodying. So when we're talking about the speeding up process, it's a very human, egoistic way of looking at it. But, just simply look at nature.
Yeah.
There's nothing sped up. Everything takes its time, the time that is required to create the most beautiful thing. A tree that is, very tall, is big. It allows several birds to make habitat on it, several creatures to eat from it and create from it. That tree is going to take 10 to 60 years to build.
Right.
On average. And then it will get to the point that it's so flourish that so many animals find their ecosystem in there. So what I'm trying to highlight over here is that the need to want to speed up things how about you take that attention and put it towards your true self and think about, how do I embody my true self? That is a trick which will allow you to
Right.
quickly, without spending too much time, which will allow you to quickly be on the path of your abundance, be on the path of your true self, which is always abundant and so resourceful. So if you're thinking about like how many days, how many weeks, that's a very human way, very egoistic way of approaching
Right.
it, the timeline. The best way to do it is thinking like, how do I embody my how do I embody my true self? And you allow those beliefs which don't serve you to be released, and you reprogram yourself, and you make an intention, and you work towards it, and you decide within your soul self, you decide within your true self that I'm going to completely embody my true self. Egoistic desires, thoughts, and fears are not going to hold me back. They're not going to stop me. They're not going to come in my way. I won't let that happen. Now I'm solely in the state of my true self, and start to feel what messages come in. You will be guided towards that, because whatever you want is available in your true self. Your true self
Yes.
is so resourceful. It is abundant. So whatever you want, if you want to be abundant at this moment, you just say, I am embodying my true self, and I want to feel the abundance of my true self. I'm not going to allow any of the egoistic fears to come through. Yeah.
I love that. That is something that I've actually been, since we talked, that I've kind of has also come up for me. It's sort of again, a self-talk, where when I can sort of sense those old, anxieties or fears or doubts come up, I kind of stop and I ask myself, okay, inner me, my true self, my inner being, how do you feel about
Wonderful.
this? What is
Wonderful.
your vibration? And I have been able to feel that. And it's very different.
It's very different.
When you allow that to kind of express itself, and it is something subtle, so but it is something that builds in strength as you connect more. The idea, and it's becoming easier for me to just stop and say, okay, I know that these are like, it's again, the ego self and the fears. Okay, inner me and my true self. What do you feel like? If I were to feel the way that you feel about where I am, what does that feel like? And if you take a pause and you give yourself that time, you do feel a different feeling. And it's sort of so different from what you're used to. It's almost difficult to describe what that feeling is, because you're not practiced in that connection and feeling it.
That is a great, helpful tip, Haley. I am sure, like, just pausing and asking your inner being that, what would you be feeling about the situation right now? And if it is right for you, either you will get a sense of calmness and security that you are okay. But if it's not right for you, your attention will be moved towards something that is right for you. So it would want to deviate your focus.
Right.
So it's very powerful. It is an important part of transition. And as I said, you're doing impeccable. And I'm very happy for you.
Thank you so much. And you know what? I so appreciate it, because again, it's so great. And this is why I think it is useful that, you offer the services you do and people can come to you, because it is, as much as you are trying to help and train people to connect to themselves and to trust their own intuition, that external guidance is sometimes necessary. And it is helpful to get that confirmation from, because ultimately we are all connected. It's like you giving me confirmation about these things that feel good and feel like I'm on a right path is really my inner self. That's how my inner self is talking to me. And that's another thing that I've been saying, the good things you hear that make you, that's your inner self talking to you. Even your inner self can talk to you through someone else 100%. And give you the message you need to receive. And so I do think I think it's great that you offer these services that you do. I think it's great that you're building the people that can help and having more people. So can you let the audience know, where can people find you if they want to utilize your services? Where do they go?
Absolutely. So I have a website called officialpsalm.com. And if you want to write to me, you can write to me through my email, which is hello@officialpsalm.com. I'm going to be passing these things onward to Haley as well. So
yes, I will put the links will be in the description. Definitely go find Sarah, because if you're on this journey and you feel like you need a little guidance, it is It's absolutely helpful. It really is. I can tell you for
Thank
myself.
you. Thank you. And you're doing a wonderful job with the podcast. It came up massively in your reading too, how this community is going to
Oh,
be
thank
really
you.
nice and flattering for you. So this was really great. Thank you so much for having me. This was a wholesome conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for coming. I would really love to have you back in the future sometime just to see how you're developing and how your business is developing, and
Of course.
absolutely hear more of the wonderful success stories that I know are coming out of your clients, because it, again, really very so helpful, just the tools that you can give people and the little nudges that you can give people to help themselves reprogram. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you. My heart is so warm. Thank you very much for all the lovely
Oh,
words you have said.
I
Thank you.
love it. Thank you. Thank you so much again to Sarah Hussain from Segue of Mind. If you'd like to contact Sarah or utilize her services, again, I have, as we talked about, used her services and gotten a reading from her that I did find to be very helpful. I do have the links in the description if you want to contact Sarah or visit her website. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Frankie 411 podcast. I do so appreciate all of you listeners. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, and leave a review. If you'd like to support more content and more interviews, you can support my Patreon, which is patreon.com/AbernathyFranklin. That, of course, is the umbrella Patreon that also supports my fictional podcast, The Adventures of Abernathy Franklin, which you can find wherever you're listening to this podcast. Thank you so much again, friends, for joining us today. As always, until next time, much love to you, my earthbound and cosmic friends. Wherever you are out there, I hope you're doing well.